start with the chicken.
Uh-huh.
It's a rooster. So, we'll go with the appropriate nice story. My grandfather was a Frenchman and a farmer, and when he passed, I decided to get a tattoo of a rooster to honor him, and then it's a really big tattoo. It came out on my shirt one day inspecting, and the agent said, hey, you should make that into your logo, so I did it as a joke. Had it drawn up, had some hats, people liked it, my wife hated it. So I kind of had two logos for a while, but people just liked it so much I just stuck with it. So, and then, like Kim mentioned, I do have another inspection company in Hawaii, which makes the chicken has a whole other difference there. Chicken fighting is a real thing there, and so it stands out there as well, although it's a conversation starter, but chicken fighting is illegal there, so, but it's a fun conversation to have. So people remember it, that's why I have it. So, it just looks cool too, right? So, all right. My background, my name is Adam Pontier. If you speak Finnish, it's Pontier. 15 years of experience, over 10,000 inspections. I'm a master inspector, sewer inspector, termite, wood destroyed insect, licensed in Kansas for radon. I'm licensed as a real estate agent, but I don't help anyone buy and sell, but it gives me full MLS access. It does help me buy rental properties, but I don't help anyone else. It gives me iBox access, I can read disclosures, all that kind of stuff. I used to manage over 500 single-family homes in the Kansas City area from about 2013 to 2016. My father's an investor, not an inspector, but I was raised as a young kid with him being an investor. So starting at a very young age, I was shoveling out cat shit from basements and all kinds of stuff, and pulling a piece of carpet and carrying it, and watching him go through that process. You know, he was a corporate guy wanting to invest in homes. He was not a tradesman at all. So it was a fun experience, and watching him grow in that to the point where he sold off 33 homes back in 2020, right before the COVID lockdown happened. Wow. And I can tell you, he more than doubled what he paid for in the homes, and every dime he put into the home, he received back. So he essentially tripled his money at some point. So I've learned a lot from him in investing. And so as an inspector, what I do is very tangible to investing, because you're buying this asset, and this is the physical look at that, and these physical aspects of it depreciate that property. So I am a buy and hold investor myself. I don't do flips, but I do like a good rental. Okay, so part of my background is I managed a bunch of properties for hedge funds. Hedge funds are a bunch of guys, corporate guys, that think they know a whole bunch about money and think houses are going to be super simple, and they just don't understand all the variables. I've seen multiple hedge funds in Kansas City fail. I think the root of the problem is their arrogance, but what they're not accounting for is all the variables. You know, just what I do as an inspector. I could stand up here for 6 hours and just show you example after example after example. My team and I went through 3 duplexes this morning, a single-family home, a townhome, and another single-family home today. So I can tell you I've seen, 5 roofs, 5 basements, whatever, 8 water heaters, 8 furnaces, 8 air conditioners, Wow. That's just today. So, there's so many variables. And let's just take air conditioners, for example. Everyone's been hearing about R22. It's expensive, it's going away. Who knows that R410A is going away?
January of this year.
Yes, they're phasing it out in the next 5 years. Because I used to be an HVAC technician and I hold the EPA license to carry Freon, I snuck myself into one of the training sessions for the contractors, for the HVAC contractors. They got to learn about the new stuff, 454B. It's flammable, slightly. But, so not to be scared of it, but that translates to they're going to be more expensive because they have new safety features on them. There's so many variables that come with this, and they overlook this stuff. And they make simplified decisions that will have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes that they make. Because when you make a mistake on one property, it costs you $5,000 or $10,000, but they do it 500 times, huge mistake. I also didn't mention I do commercial inspections, multifamily inspections, 100-unit complex, 200-unit complexes all over from Kansas City to St. Louis, down to Oklahoma, up in Nebraska. So I've seen big deals going down, where maybe after my inspection, they had to renegotiate, get $2 million off the deal. Those are big time numbers, right? And if they're not accounting for that, that corporation's going to go bankrupt. I watched some of these hedge funds do it because I managed 473 properties for one hedge fund.
Wow.
And they ignored house after house after house. We'll talk more about this later. They just sent their contractor through for a bid. Contractor won the job. Ignored the roof that was needing replaced. We're going to go manage it. Roof's leaking. Hey, you got to fix this. Well, crap, that's another $10,000, $15,000. So now they're not making money on that property. So the formula that they use is too simple. They lose the sight of the end user, the tenant, and the buyers. I'm a buy and hold guy, so I think so much about buy and hold, but this all translates to flipping too. But it gets much more serious, much quicker, because you're going to see me or someone like me out there, and you just don't want to hear, yeah, this foundation's got a lot of structural movement. Call for an engineer. Engineer comes out and tells you there's $20,000 worth of issues. That may have been all your profits. That may be more than your profits. You might lose $10,000 to get rid of a house. That's not fun.
No.
Okay, so as an inspector, I have one brain. As an investor, I have another brain. It shows right here. As an inspector, I call them the integrity items of a property. Investors, capital expenditure items, CapEx items, roof, structure, electrical, HVAC, and plumbing. What does this mean? I could rehab an entire property, do all these things, but I really haven't added much value to the property. What I mean by that is, my tenant's not going to pay me more money just because I put a new roof on it. All they care about is that, stand over here. All they care about is that the roof doesn't leak on them. Foundation, they don't want their stuff being flooded. Electrical, well, you walk in a room, you expect your lights to come on. And the HVAC and plumbing are your two biggest maintenance calls as a landlord, especially HVAC. We're in a world where we don't open windows and we expect to be the right temperature at all times, so your tenants just expect that air to work and they just expect the plumbing to work. Now, I can tell you that I've been in plenty of rentals where there's flooded crawl spaces from raw sewage and the tenants never made a complaint, but they will call you if the air conditioner's not working. I once got a call as a property manager on Christmas Eve, hey, the heat's not working, I didn't want to send out my tech, told my wife I'm sorry, I have young kids, went over there, opened the door, got blasted by heat, and it was a super cold Christmas or whatever time, and I was like, you told me this isn't working. Like, well, I have it set at 90, it's only 85 in here. I was so pissed, I just slammed that door, walked out, went home. Called him 2 days after Christmas and said, what the? They're like, well, we set it at 90, it should be 90. I'm like, oh my God, it's like -5 out. So that was just a tenant horror story, I guess. Plumbing, we'll get more into details on these later, but because there's just so much. I could spend an hour on each one of these, just to show you example after example after example. What I want to accomplish tonight is to arm you guys with the mindset when you're going out looking at properties to really look into those details. Take your time, write notes, take pictures. I'm on the younger side, I guess. What's 42? Is that younger? I like tech, so I'm all about the apps and the videos and the notes and all that, all digital. I do have a paper checklist. You guys are more than welcome if you're tech savvy to copy out my checklist and put that into some form of app. Okay. Why do your own assessment? A couple reasons. You are your own best advocate. No one else is going to stand up for you in this process like yourself. I mean, you're the one taking the risk, right? Outside of me as the inspector, and not to throw real estate agents under the bus or title companies or any of that, everyone else gets paid when you do the deal. If a contractor tells you to walk away from a property, he's not getting paid, right? So me and the engineers and the other inspector types, we're the true third-party independent. And what I mean by that is I get paid the same no matter what. The house can be perfect, we already agreed on a price. The house is falling down, we already agreed on a price. I owe it to you to give you a fair and honest, independent third-party assessment on what I saw on that day and at that time. You should have that same mindset. Ultimately, you're the one dealing with the problems, right? So really pay attention. I mean, it's like buying a car, you know? Now, we're not all mechanics, right? You don't want to buy a car that's going to be problematic. You don't want to buy a project house that's going to be problematic. You don't want to buy a home for yourself that's going to be problematic. Ultimately, you're the owner. You own this house, this asset, and all of its flaws with it. It's like getting married for better and for worse. You own this property. Let me tell you something, someone else. Buyers are getting wiser. I've been in this for 15 years. When I first started, we did a home inspection and termite inspection. And then it was a home termite and radon test. And then it was home termite radon sewer scope. And then, you know, now we're doing full chimney level 2 inspection, scoping the chimney. So, you know, if you're flipping a house, these are the things coming down the pipe. Full mold inspections. Not just saying, hey, I see some mold, you should get that looked at, but like guys coming in and doing air tests or, you know, coming in and doing full assessments from a mold aspect. As a landlord, maybe I'm just super paranoid because I'm an inspector, but I never want my tenant to call me and say, hey, I've got some lung infection now because this house has mold in it. In most properties. Sure, if I spend enough time in the DoubleTree, I can find some mold somewhere. With that said, you just need to be guarded against it as a landlord. Contractors. I love them, hate some of them. Oh, by the way, I also work as an expert witness. I get hired by lawyers on occasion to testify against builders and contractors, so I've seen some really terrible stuff. Like they were guessing at how to put a house together. But generally speaking, contractors are great. You're definitely gonna have to work with them. They're the ones that are gonna turn your dream into a reality. And not all contractors are created equally. My last bit of advice on a contractor is trust but verify. Hey, we're gonna do this, I am that, I can do this. Great, I believe you. Now let me verify it. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm gonna get multiple bids. I'm gonna have an engineer, or I don't need a permit for that. Great, I'm gonna verify that. Because they're not the one holding the bag. You are. The other thing is, well, so I've been coming around these meetings for a long time, right? And years ago, I was here and I was standing around with an investor and a real estate agent that I've been working with. And the investor was like, why would I hire an inspector? I'm redoing the entire house. The conversation was interesting because I said, look, so you replace every roof? No. You fix every foundation? You have every foundation redone? No. You rewire every house? No. So we were in this kind of weird limbo, and the agent finally broke the tension by saying, can you do an inspection that doesn't incorporate kitchens and bathrooms if they're gonna gut those anyways? So I said, sure. Let me think about that, and I came up with doing a majors only. I called it a 5-point inspection, and that's the integrity items. The roof, structure, main electrical, main plumbing, and HVAC. You know, and then some people are like, well, I plan on replacing the roof, you don't have to look at that. That's fine. But it gives me a guideline to work with them. You know, like my contractor will look at everything. And I came out to properties that have been flipped. My contractor said that's fine. Well, they were, you know, why did my contractor miss this? You know, they did this job, they should have told me I needed a new roof. Well, they were focused on bidding the job. You know, they weren't there to, what lens were they there? Hey, go bid this job for me. What do you want to do? I want to fix everything. Okay. And they go look at the kitchens, bathrooms, floors, this and that. Look from the ground, yeah, roof looks fine. Okay. The other thing is, they're not independent third parties. You know, they want that job. They will look at it and go, ah, we'll just put that in change order later. I'm not saying every contract is that way, but it can happen. It again, it comes back to the asset you're purchasing has defects that will lower the value. Know what those are and plan accordingly. You know, and I will use just fake rough numbers, but let's say you're buying a $100,000 property and you think it's going to be worth $150 later, and your rehab is going to be $30. Cool, I'm going to make $20,000. But the roof had an issue and it needs replaced. There's 3 layers, there's 2 layers, but you know, the bottom layer is wood chick shingle. It can't be insured by an expired. Crap, there's $15,000. Sewers collapsed, that's a minimum $10,000 to dig down and fix that. So now you're $25,000, you know, you're $155,000, you're $5,000 in the hole.
Wow.
Real quick, you know? And I'm not just advocating for myself to do this stuff as an inspector. I do think my job's important, but I think you need to be walking these properties, and so not to waste your time and money on me, because I get plenty of, hey, go look at this house for me. Cool. Yeah, it's all crap. No, you know, it's like, yes, I had one yesterday, investor from Hawaii. Roof's bad, foundation needs work, all the plumbing needed replaced.
Wow.
Breaker panel was obsolete. I mean, it was real quick, a good $60,000, $70,000. By the time you take what the purchase price, and this is going to be a buy and hold, she was going to be somewhere in the range of $180,000 to $200,000 in rehabbing this house. Median rent in that area is about $1,100. Not a great deal. She's like, crap. I'm like, yeah. Now, unfortunately, she just can't come here and walk the houses like you guys can, right? But has she walked it, kind of just run through this checklist real quick. I'm not saying, it depends on your personality, right? You might write down every detail on this checklist, or you might just put some bigger numbers on there and then ask your contractor, hey, don't forget the roof. What about the foundation? Do we have an engineer look at that? Do we scope the sewer? It may save you from some of these big mistakes. Again, commonly missed issues by investors. They typically fall in CapEx items. Look, we all know how to use a bathroom, I hope. We all have kitchens. We all know how to operate doors and windows of that nature. This is the things that we interact with daily. But we don't interact with our roof. We don't interact with our foundation. We don't interact with our breaker panel. We do interact with our HVAC every day, but do we really know how it works? No, you just push a button.
Right.
Plumbing, do we really know how it works? Unless you're a contractor or been elbow deep in someone's sewage, probably not. You just flush and hope it goes away. I mean, it's how my kids operate.
Yeah.
Right? Well, they know better now. When they start doing stupid stuff, I get the sewer camera out and show them. And they can identify termites. So. All right, why are these areas overlooked? I mean, we know they're overlooked, but why are they? Contractor wasn't there to bid them. Contractor isn't familiar with them. You told the contractor what you wanted, so they didn't bid them. You have a lot of influence, right? Hey, don't forget this. I don't see this on here. What about that? Don't trust but verify. Hey, you didn't put anything on here about the blah, blah, blah. Did you look at that? What did you think? You were focused on what you wanted to do with the property, not what was actually present. You know, I'm guilty of this myself when I go look at properties, especially if it's like a personal home, but even investment, like, ooh, this is a good price. Ooh, I can do this, I can do that, I think I can do this. But I've really been, I'm more excited about the deal than I am what's actually present at that property that I'm going to have to deal with. So keep yourself honest. By the way, these are all AI generated. So. I thought about using real photos, and I have millions of them. And I thought, well, maybe one of the properties would show up. And it's legitimate. Like, I work with a lot of you, or if I've inspected one of your properties and you're mad at me, fair enough. If I've testified against you, let's talk. Roofs. I love seeing home buyers when they're just, out by the house looking at, looks good. Cool. You know, realistically, when you're going to go evaluate a house, you're not going to climb on a roof. Probably don't have permission to. I mean, if you have a drone, use it. I do. But like when I'm just doing a walkthrough, you can get a pretty good idea from the ground. If you see shiny stuff, you see things missing. If you look at the edge and it looks really thick, you know, like there's a bunch of shingles up there, that's not good. I had a real estate agent once try to convince me the more layers it was, the better it was. It makes it stronger. You are allowed 2 layers of shingles. I don't even like 2 layers. That top layer, let's say it's a 30-year shingle, we'll probably get 15 years out of it. But it's insurable. 3 layers is not acceptable. It's against code. And you start worrying about snow load and things like that. But if you get a roofer talking you into putting a second layer, oh, we don't have to replace that. We just go right on top. You only have 1 layer, it's good. I wouldn't do it. It's not worth the $500 you save. It's not worth whatever money you save because if you're spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on a roof, you cut that life in half, I'm cheap. I want that full 30 years. I mean, realistically, we're going to get hail, 2-inch hail, like we had recently, and everyone's going to get new roofs. But my other advice is, when working with roofers, work with local roofers. Don't get these guys driving through neighborhoods. Make sure they have a Kansas City metro address. Because these fly-by-night roofers are terrible.
Well, Kansas, they have to be registered and licensed and on the state website to put a roof on. But you know what you got to watch out for? Is you got these name brand roofers.
Yeah.
But they're all hiring. 99% of them are hiring subcontractors who are not licensed.
Correct.
So that's what the public's not aware of.
Yeah. So the one company has their name on top, the subs aren't, right? And so like when there's a big storm, they bring in a bunch of help from everywhere, and these guys are just collecting the paycheck. You also got to watch out for like natural disasters when things like Katrina hit and all these, you know, wildfires and all that. What that will do is impact the flow of product too. So then like all of a sudden the roofing companies slam because they got to replace all the roofs in Houston or something. And they're just flying off the shelf. Manufacturing gets a little quick and you start getting defects, manufacturer defects in them. So yes, that's true. Thank you.
How do I know? I got burned and OSHA showed up on the job.
Ouch.
Ouch, it's big time.
Hail damage, you know, and I could like, this list could be like 45 pages long. And I can show you photo after photo after photo. Hail's been recent, you know, you think it's fine, looks fine from the ground, but you get up there and it's just ding, 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 ding everywhere. It will shorten the life of the shingle. It could be insurability problems. Roofs that are near the end of their useful life, you know. One of my best advice is when you're looking at a roof from the ground, you can ballpark the age by how dark the staining is. This is a fun thing to do when your kids are little and you're teaching them this stuff. Driving down the road, like, how do you think that roof is? The dark staining comes from this lichen algae that grows. It depends, it's regional. It looks worse in Hawaii and it looks worse in like Louisiana because they don't have cold temperatures really. But in Kansas City, I can look at the staining on the roof and tell you, oh, that's about 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old. And this is the dark staining. You'll see the streaks on the roof. The darker it is, the older it is. If it looks black and heavy streak, it's 20 plus. If it's just starting to show, it's probably that 10 to 15 year range. Less than 10, you're probably not going to see much of that algae staining on it. So that's just kind of like a, you know, stay on the ground, drive by, the roof's old as hell. You know, it's stained black. You'll see white streaks in it, and it's usually because of like some copper or galvanized metal that's above it that will stain, you know, that will re-bleach the algae to a different color. Big mistake I see investors make is it's a wood shake shingle roof underneath, and it's a performing wood shake shingle. Like it's, and this was pretty common all the way up until about 2005 maybe. Roofers would just go right over the top of the wood shake shingle. It's now not considered insurable, it's considered a fire hazard still. So it's like, cool, we get this, you know, 5-year-old roof on it, 10-year-old roof on it, everyone's happy, the homeowner was happy, he sold it to you. Now you're there, I come out and go, you got wood shake underneath. Automatic red flag. Rip all of it off and put down plywood or OSB or whatever. It's got super expensive. Thank you, COVID. And now you're gonna reshingle the entire roof. So if you get a chance, walk through a property, see an attic access hatch. I'm not advocating you bring a ladder during a showing, but if you can peek in there and just look at the bottom side, and if you see a bunch of wood shake shingles from the bottom, you see black tar paper, because sometimes it's just black tar paper, but if you look at the edge or peel it back a little bit, you'll see the wood shake shingle underneath. South Johnson County, Cedar Creek, there was a mandate in some of these HOAs that you had to have a wood shake shingle roof. You know, we're talking $500,000 to $2 million homes. They since have had to change that rule, but they would go over with the steel coated roofs, the aluminum coated roofs, and just put it right over the wood shake shingle. There's an argument with that black tar paper there. Is that a fire barrier? Is that not a fire barrier? You could lose your butt on that though, because those roofs could be $80,000, $100,000 if you're doing high-end flips. So if you're not sure, take a picture, phone a friend, you know. You guys will get my email at the end. If you're stuck, you're not sure, shoot me a picture. I'll give you the best advice I can from a photo. Recommend you to take whatever next step. Free of charge. Just give me a few hours. Basements. I don't know what this is. I mean, this is some weird AI like version of plumbing. And also, is that like, that looks like branches? I don't know.
That's the radon.
But it was free and it was AI, so it's kind of cool. Did I hear that's the radon system?
Yeah.
Foundations. I could teach a 10-hour class on this, and I still wouldn't be the most qualified person here. Olson Foundations is here. They can teach more on this than what I know. The engineers that work in this field can teach even more. But I've spent a lot of time with foundations. I've spent a lot of time working with engineers so that way I can dial in what I tell you to be the most accurate. At a 1/4 inch in width, that's considered a structural crack. Typically at 1 inch of lateral movement, where the wall goes in or out, typically here, in. At 1 inch is when we start talking about bracing. There is debate among engineers about at 3 to 4 inches. Is it 3? Is it 4? We'll go with 4 for now. If it goes 4 inches in, then you gotta dig out all the soil next to it, push the wall back, and then brace it. Anytime someone has to dig, especially when it involves machinery, it gets really expensive really quick. Horizontal cracks, typically again, mean hydrostatic pressure, which is a fancy word for saying the water pushed the wall. If people would have their gutters cleaned, have their gutter downspouts only 6 to 8 feet away from the foundation, and have what we call a positive grade, you know, like 1 inch of drop over the first 6 feet as you're going away from the house, you would stop that water from pushing on the walls. When it's dry out, when we hit our droughts, and you start to see that soil shrinking away, you've got to keep the ground wet. You know, it's like a loose tooth, right? Back, forth, eventually it's going to pop out. You know, it dries, it rots out, you get heavy rains, it pushes in, it's weakening that wall. Foundation repairs get very expensive very quick. Typically in, say, like a poured concrete foundation that's not a walkout, you know, you're talking about bracing every 6 feet. My recommendation is to go talk to the guys from Olson to find out how much does a brace cost. When you see the braces along the wall on the inside, that's not a pier. People call them piers all the time. It is a brace. If it's a walkout, which means like basement here and then no basement over here, typically you're not putting braces against this wall, because if it continues to push and there's no soil over here, it can push the house over. I've seen it. It was pretty impressive from a very sadistic point of view, but I was like, wow. Yeah, if you're in an inspection and you hear me say, oh, cool, That's probably not good for someone's pocket, but really fun for me because I just saw something I haven't seen before. Where I was like, oh, yeah. Dead man anchors are even more expensive. There's probably a more nicer term than dead man, but I don't know what it is. But let's say this was a walkout this way. They're going to put a plate in here. They're going to tie back through it, and then they'll have an anchor out in the yard that they tie that foundation wall to, because you have to have something stable to stabilize that wall. Things you can look for: water staining, cracks. Bring a business card with you. If you can put a business card in the crack, it probably can use some sort of sealant if they're horizontal. CMU, which is masonry block. If you start seeing in between the block, you start seeing gaps and it looks like stairs, probably settlement. Foundations typically go in or out, down or up. In Kansas City, we don't get a lot of heaving, at least not that I've seen. Foundations tend to go down and then inward. I have seen them go outward during droughts, but majority of what I see is lateral movement inside and then settlement down. When they start to go down, that's when you talk about a pier. And they're gonna cut up the concrete here, go beneath the footing, sometimes inside, sometimes outside, go beneath the footing, put in these helical piers or different types of piers that they have available, and they go underneath that footing, push up against that, and push down until it won't push anymore, and then stabilize that. If that sounds difficult and expensive, it's because it is.
Wow.
And you're not just like, oh, I need, like if I had to guess, this AI showing settlement, like it's dropping down. They're not just gonna put one here and here. It's gonna be like this whole back wall here, here, and probably a whole other wall. You're gonna spend $30,000, $40,000. Cracks are very serious. There are typical minor shrinkage cracks. Foundations are essentially pottery. We're mixing some sand and clay and soil. It's going to dry, and as it dries, it's going to have some cracks. But what we're looking for is something that shows movement. We're standing in a building. This is slab on grade. I don't think there's anything below us. Maybe there is, but let's assume this is just slab on grade, no basement, no crawl space. But if I start seeing cracks in the wall, okay, it's reflecting what's happening below. If I start seeing doors get out of square, oh man, this time last year, I think it was, I was looking at a commercial property with a bunch of investors in town, and this thing was built on a landfill. There wasnwasn't a square door in this property. I mean, it was super cool. I mean, from my perspective, it was really cool. But like these investors were like, no, you know, like they had bids to do the work and whatnot, but it was like, damn, you're sitting on a landfill though. Like how long are these repairs going to work? Because it was extensive. But you start seeing doors out square, door frames that are twisted, floors that dip down. It's telling you something, right? I mean, if it's not square and it's not level, you know, there's something to be said for age. As things and buildings get older, even people, things sag, you know, and go to deform. And some of that's typical for age. And if you're not sure, check with someone. One of the properties I was in today, stone foundation, a little out of square, but the agent that was there was like, man, these floors are really sloped in, but I don't see anything going with the foundation. It was the whole center beam had been chewed through by termites. And they had come right up the post, hit the beam. The beam's now distorted and sagging. So someone's gonna have to get in there, temporary support everything, rip out what's left of the beam, put in a new column, put in a footing below that column. Hopefully they'll add a steel beam there, and you know, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 later, depending on what approach they take, they'll have it fixed. But it's a serious issue. Termites. The good news is termites here are way less aggressive than in Hawaii. We have southeastern subterranean termites. Comparatively, compared to like drywood termites out in Hawaii where they have to tent houses, you know, it's $5,000 to treat for termites there. It's usually about $500 on average for a home here to treat. not to make repairs. And our termites move way slower. Like driveway termites go from one side of the house to the other in 1 year. Here, maybe like one colony, 2 linear feet a year. And typically, you're going to see them coming in around the sill plate or the band joist. Our termites have to go back to ground for water, or they have to have a water source, so they're going to go back to the wall. They have to go back to ground. And they build these nice little cool dirt tunnels. If you see dirt growing up a wall, the dirt's not growing up a wall. Termites are eating the wood, crapping it out, and then making a tunnel out of it. It's a whole process. They have to, I love the science of termites, but they have to keep their body at a certain temperature. They're very destructive, but again, treatment here is not that bad. So if you stay on top of it, totally doable. The only way to stop termites from entering a house would be to quit building houses out of their food, which is dead wood. So the reality is we're just going to keep facing them and facing them and facing them. I would say 80% of homes in Kansas City have termites.
Wow.
It's like houses that had termites, houses that have termites, or houses that will have termites. The number one spot I can find them, like if I had no other option, but you give one spot to go check, it's just adjacent to the front stoop. Any house that would have a concrete style foundation, that front stoop, they poured in concrete, used wood forms, poured the top. Wood forms were left there, termites ate those forms, and then come right in adjacent to that. I was in a house right below the stairwell, had not seen a spot of termites in there. They had left no visible evidence in the wood. Took my screwdriver, popped it in that top board, right through it. Termite damage, started prying at it, dig on the entire band joist right underneath that front door. So they're going to need a treat. They can sister that band joist and move on, but it'll look clean. So if you get an opportunity, have a screwdriver, go to your own home, check right there. Water intrusion, look for water staining. Water is going to lead to mold growth. Like this one house, I should just put that report up there. Water intrusion coming through the foundation wall. Gutters were missing on one half, falling off on the other half. Soil was real flat next to the foundation, so water seeping through the foundation. So that's going to lead to humidity. That humidity is going to lead to the right temperature and level. When the right temperature hits with the right amount of humidity, mold spores are flying through the air. Mold's going to grow. It was all over all the floor joist. Trick for looking for mold: is that a stain? Is that mold? Is that stain? Is that mold? Take your flashlight, shine it at an angle. So if I was like looking for it on this table, I'm not going to shine my flashlight like this. I'm going to shine it like this. The trick is it dimensional? Does it cast a shadow? Does it come up off of the hard surface? If it does, that dimensional means it's organic growth, likely mold, needs to be treated. The EPA's guideline on mold mitigation, whether it be professional or homeowner, is 10 square feet. 10 square feet or less, less than 10 square feet, the EPA is like, anyone can handle it. Apparently at 10 square feet is when professional. I mean, I guess you have to draw a line somewhere. But their recommendation is professional. And I use that guideline as well when I'm inspecting. I'm like, see, if I try to port this baseboard a little bit, maybe not a big deal. But if I walk in this room and it's covering most of this wall, we have another conversation, right? The trick with mold, the one thing we can control with mold growth, we can't control temperature, we can't control mold spores. What we can control is water. And so if we eliminate water, then we can eliminate the mold. The water sources obviously being environmental, like rain or water leaks from plumbing. So you can get mold growth from direct water leakage, like water leaks through this wall and it gets on that sheetrock. We're going to have a nice big spot of mold right there. Or let's say we shut this room up and didn't let any airflow on here, and natural humidity comes and it goes and it comes and it goes, and 20 years later we come in this room without any ventilation or anything, probably gonna see mold growth from the humidity. So getting the water, stopping water, but if water does happen, getting rid of it quickly is the key. Be on the lookout for mold. It likes corners, it likes crevices. It's never like typically just like in the middle of the wall. It likes the corners down there because the air is missing it. It's not getting, airflow through it. And so it tends to hide in closets around corners and things of that nature. Underneath stairwells. Attics is another one. Kind of backing up to attics or to roofs. Another key factor is ventilation. If you get to a roof and you don't see any vents on it, you don't see any vents below, that means that roof's not venting. You've got to have air flowing underneath that roof and getting the air out from underneath of it, unless it happens to be finished and it's completely insulated. So if you get to, oh, this roof's new. Had this happen just last week. New roof on a rental property, selling it to another buy and hold investor, not one stitch of venting on this roof. Which then raises my concern. We go in the attic full of mold. This roof's never been ventilated. So we just have stagnant air in there with the humidity, creating the perfect breeding ground for mold.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. Electrical. The aluminum wiring, actually not really far from here, it's really common. And it was around from like 1966 to 1976. And the scare with aluminum wiring is solid aluminum wiring, not the stranded. And it's, like again, 66 to 76 are the prime eras for that. There's pockets of Noble Park, there's pockets in Northland and Blue Springs, all in that same era. The problem with aluminum is as it's compressed over the years, it stays compressed. It doesn't have what they call the same spring tension. It doesn't keep pushing back. So what happens is the screw that's pushing down on it, eventually this aluminum becomes not in low contact with it, and then it starts to arc and it creates a fire.
Wow.
It's not the easiest thing to spot. But if you know you're in a home from that 66 to 76 and you're in the basement, look at the wiring, you'll see the sheathing, like the plastic coating over the wire. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll see AL or aluminum written on it. You know you're dealing with aluminum wired there. Sometimes the black coated stuff is aluminum, but it's not always. Sometimes that's copper too. So again, unless you're taking off the panel cover, it's hard to know. But at least if you know you're buying a house from 66 to 76, that's something to double check.
You need to replace it, or you just screw it down, or what do you?
Really good question. You have a couple options. You can gut the house and rewire it. You can use Lumicon connectors. They're about $8 a pop, and there's at least 3 in every outlet and switch, hot, ground, neutral. And what you can do is retrofit it from aluminum to copper. So, actually probably $10 a piece now. So that's like $30 material plus electrician's time. It needs to be a master electrician. But those are these specialty connectors. And you can't just use like a regular wire nut. It's a specialty connector that go from aluminum to copper. And they're really expensive. I see people just trying to splice in, with regular wire nuts, and that's not going to hold. That's going to become the fire hazard in itself. But a retrofit is a reasonable expectation for a repair. It's not the random wire sitting behind the ceiling or behind the wall, it's the actual connections that's the problem. If you're not sure where to find wire, look right above the breaker panel. You're usually going to see a bunch of wire there. AL is short for aluminum. There's copper over aluminum, that's a whole other conversation. You're not going to spot that unless you open the panel. And then there's also knob and tube wiring, which we see a ton of in Kansas City. Literally it's a tube, like when it goes through the joist, there's a little ceramic tube. And then when it's on the outside of the joist, there's a ceramic knob that they just loop the wire around and keep going. It's an insurability problem. They're a fire hazard. I see a ton of rental homes that they've spliced that, and that's fine. They put in junction boxes and they get rid of it, but they forget it in the attic. We get in the attic and there's just live knob and tube. But if you see that old, outdated type of wiring, again, you know, they make these cheap, I say cheap, like $15, $20 proximity testers for electricity. It just takes a battery, you hold it up, and if it's live, it'll turn red. You know, I'm not above carrying one of those in my pocket, even just walking through houses. I keep a flashlight with me, that, and an outlet tester, a couple things that's not my full inspection stuff, but if I'm just walking, maybe I carry some of these things with me, and I see that knob and tube, I just lay it up there real quick. Ooh, it's hot, I'm going to have to replace that, which means if it's there in the basement, then it's probably in the attic too. But you're going to spend several $1,000s replacing that, retrofitting it. Again, they don't really care what's behind the wall. It's just what's visible at that point. So it's a little bit different than aluminum in that sense. There's a couple breaker panels that are known fire hazards. Stab lock, if you just look at the front, it says stab lock. That's with Zinsko, Sylvania. It's another known fire hazard. My best advice is look at the breaker panels at Home Depot, memorize what they look like. You go to a house and you see something that looks different than that, like the breakers are different shaped, or they're all down the center. Pushmatics.
Oh yeah, Federal
Pacific, which is stab lock. Federal Pacific stab lock. FPE, you'll see that on the cover. Bulldog Pushmatic. I'm not as against the Pushmatics, so I'm also an electrician by trade, so I have a lot of deep opinions on electrical stuff. The Bulldog Pushmatics, they don't have the same fire hazard as the Federal Pacific stab locks or the Zinsko Sylvanias, but those breakers are very expensive. The springs in them have worn out, and those are ones that look like push buttons. Just push them. They're expensive to replace. They're kind of a pain to work with, and realistically, that panel's just kind of outdated. But you can get away. I have a rental home that has one in it. I've replaced a handful of the breakers and things like that. It's working fine, but it's not like a known fire hazard. So a lot of electricians will be like, no, you need to replace it. And I don't blame them. I mean, they're in the business of selling electrical upgrades. So the obvious reasons why you need to be looking at this stuff is the cost, but also for the safety of your, you know, if it's a flip, and I come in and find aluminum, you know, I'm going to tell my buyers, and then they're going to like go, oh my gosh. They're going to call an electrician. They're going to get a bid. They're going to go, oh my gosh. They're going to go, I want you to discount that house this amount. If you look at it and it looks just poorly done, like wire nuts hanging out, junction boxes with no covers on them, wires just kind of hanging loose. These are things that you, as a typical homeowner, as an average human being, look at and go, that's not right. I mean, you should make note of that and talk to your contractor, talk to your electrician. But be on the lookout for some of these breaker panels that just don't. And I can provide samples of those. I just don't have them with me. All right. I'm doing okay on time. All right. HVAC, commonly missed issues by investors. It works. We're happy. Average lifespan of an air conditioner is 12 to 15 years. Average lifespan of a furnace is 18 to 25. The average lifespan of a high efficient is 15 to 20. So you pay more money to get less life.
That figures.
That's good.
The obvious is doesn't work is important, you know, but then, and you know, I always put it in my backpack because I didn't want it on me, but I have a Leatherman that has a little screwdriver on it, you know, so I'll pull up panel covers on furnaces and stuff when I'm just walking them. And this is me as an investor, not me as an inspector, but I'm going to pop it open. Is that heat exchange rusted? What's that data tag say? Data tags are extremely hard to read. Some of them are super easy. Some will say manufactured on 12/22/2009. Others will, you know, it's Linux is the second two numbers in the serial number, whereas Goodman is the first two numbers in the serial number for the year.
Wow.
So it gets really confusing.
Yeah.
Buildingcenter.org. I should have put that up here. It's a cheat sheet for everyone, but mostly inspectors, because we cannot sit here and memorize every nomenclature out there to know the age of something. So we all use it. Every investor should have it. I have it saved as a shortcut on every one of my phones. As a quick reference for what's this one? Water heaters are the same way. A lot of them will have the year on them, but then Bradford White is the first letter in the serial number. And like A could be this year or this year. It's a personal pain in my butt. But know those ages, know what they are, and you can start to, how do I phrase this? Anticipate your future expenditures, like in buying a home. I know the average air conditioner is 12 to 15 years. One second. I know it's average 12 to 15 years. I'm buying a property. This thing's 13 years old. It works, but it's old. It works, but it's old. What do I do with that as an investor? Because you're in that gray area, I start to rethink a little bit like, okay, well now I'm calculating risk. If it's 13 years old and I think it looks like it's been maintained pretty good, and I think it's going to last another 3 or 4 years, I take the cost of that air conditioner and put it in my cash flow spreadsheet. By the way, spreadsheets are your best friend. But I take that and I put it in my cash flow spreadsheet and I wash it out over however many years I think it's going to last. And I'm gambling here, but educated gambling, because maybe it goes out in a year, but maybe it goes out in 10 years. You do it enough, you really start to get a feel for it. But at least you've allocated some money in your maintenance monthly over cash flow cost to offset that. Maybe it's super old and you're going to ask for it in your renegotiations. But at least you, walking through, before you even make an offer, know 30-year-old air conditioner, 30-year-old furnace, water heater doesn't work, foundation has cracks, roof's 3 layers. I better start getting bids, if I'm going to go through with this. But maybe you want to make an offer, it's a $100,000 property, but you got $50,000 worth of issues. Maybe that helps inform you what you're going to offer. Or maybe they don't accept your offer, but that's fine, because at least you didn't pay me to go out there. And I charge you $500, $600, $800,000 to find out all this information. Let someone else pay me to do that. And then that seller can disclose a report, and then we can have a conversation about that report someone else paid for. Old and obsolete. Oh, sorry, you had a question.
What was the name of that site? Buildingcenter.org.
And I think center may be spelled the British way, like C-E-N-T-R-E. Fancy.
Building-center.
Thank you, building-center. Jeff knows. Just tell Jeff, he'll send it to you. Yeah.
Are you doing any meth testing in Kansas and Missouri on the walls?
We aren't. I've taken a class on what to be on the lookout for. It definitely exists here. That's one of those things that legally has to be disclosed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it hit me in Colorado on a property I was buying.
Okay. That is a specialized, so if you get any inkling, and I'm like, when I do research on property, I research properties. Like sometimes I find out who owned it, and I Google them, and then I look them up on Facebook, Instagram. Oh, this guy might be doing, yeah, so you can.
Neighbors.
But yeah, meth testing is something that's, once it contaminates, it's contaminated. But my understanding is we're seeing less of it because the cooking methods are different now, so. And that's the end of my expertise on meth. So it's not like Breaking Bad when they were like in the tinted houses. By the way, that's when they were treating for termites. Anyways. Look at the general shape of the air conditioner and furnace. If you see water stains, you see corrosion, look at the flue, does it look corroded? You know, these things are all indicators. They're telling you a story of how this property has been treated. You know, I walked into a lot of recently renovated properties that are being sold turnkey to investors that are out of state. It's like, man, it looks good in the pictures. Get there, finish work's not as good as I thought it was going to be from the pictures. Then I get in the basement and I see a janky old furnace. I mean, if you're going to flip a house and you're going to keep that furnace, get it serviced. Have an HVAC professional come out, clean it, service it, put some paperwork on it, you know? That way when someone like me comes in and says, hey, this thing's old, and they go, yeah, but blah, 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 HVAC company said it's in great working shape and we should have 5 more years out of it. Great.
Wow.
I can back up all the way to the beginning and tell you guys, I'm a generalist. The trades are the specialist. Engineers are the specialist. I'm like your general practitioner. If I feel a lump, I don't diagnose you with cancer. If I see a crack in the foundation, I don't tell you this is how you repair it. I say, you need to talk to a specialist. A specialist, both in foundations, engineers I work with, will say, you need this size of beam, this. Now, I know a lot of these answers, and I can give you guys ballpark information on it because I've paid for it. I've done some of the work as a tradesman. But as an inspector, I have to be a generalist. As an investor, I'm super opinionated and think I'm always right. But I trust but verify. Like, oh, this foundation needs $20,000 worth of work. Call my engineer. You're right, it does. Or, no, it needs 10. No, it needs 30. I still check with my tradesman, the guy who's actually going to do the work. My spreadsheets I use for looking at properties, I like to play a game with myself and put in ballpark numbers and see how accurate I am. And then as those trades and those contractors come in, then I put them right beside it and adjust my thinking accordingly. But when I do my walkthrough and I'm making my offers, and I'm better at it than the average person, right? Because I'm an inspector, I've done this a lot. I'll put together what I think my projected cost is going to be. And then I work out whatever deal I think I'm going to get and get under contract, do inspections. Then I bring out my tradesmen, you know, my roofer, hey, how much to replace this roof? Or, hey, how much to replace the sewer line that I found broken 10 feet underneath the ground in the middle of the street? And it's like, oh, 30,000. But then I'm able to take those facts, not just opinions, but facts, right? If this is broke, this is what it's going to cost. I can take that then at that point and renegotiate. I don't own the problem yet. But you as the investor, again, you're your best advocate. Go through, be aware, ask questions. And you know, I love it when an investor shows up and says, well, what about this? I'm usually like, yeah, getting there. Like, let me talk first. And then if I haven't answered your questions, please ask. Because, and I do this every single day, talking with investors, out of state or in town, they fly in town, we're local, get through, give them the highlights, and then there's usually one more question. Where they had 20, but I answered them as I went through my, this is what I found, this is what I found, this is what I found, this is what I found. Moving on. Plumbing.
Wow.
There's a lot. There is the supply side, clean water. The waste side, dirty water. Polybutylene is a gray-looking PEX-looking pipe. It'll have usually the number letters PV and then 2110 on it. It's an insurability problem for a lot of homes. Most commonly installed between 1985 and 1995. If you Google it, it's a bit like Googling your symptoms. You're going to freak out and crap your pants. Problem is that there are certain areas like the entire East Coast that this is just a big no-no. Like the state of Florida is like, no polybutylene, it's the worst thing ever. Not going to have it. In Kansas City, we're starting to see more and more issues with insurance companies on it. And the trick is, oh yeah, my insurance is cool with it. Great, but you ask them what happens if you have to make a claim on it. Oh, they're going to drop you. Oh, so it's kind of like not being insured. If you're going to get dropped, they're going to put that on your record, and then you go to get homeowners insurance again, and it's quadruple the amount. It's known as spontaneously leak, but again, it looks like PEX piping. It's gray. Letters PB and the numbers 2110. It's gray.
It's in a lot of Hallbrook houses.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of remodels during that time in Hallbrook, but I mean, we're kind of like in the right location for it right here, to be honest. I mean, this part of Johnson County, Olathe, and I get agents pissed off at me all the time. Well, what the F are we supposed to do with all these houses here? I'm like, I don't know, man. I didn't cause the problem. I just told you what was here. Don't shoot the messenger. No, I mean, people need to be aware of it and make their own decisions about it. You know, like I asked my friend who's a master plumber who's way more dirty foul mouth than me. He's like, how do you feel about it? He's like, well, he gives me a text answer. I'm like, you personally. He's like, well, I was like, what do you think about polybutylene? He's like, it's cheap shit they put in trailer homes. I had a real estate agent once point out that it's still allowed by Olathe code. That's the newer stuff. And it is commonly used in trailer homes. But if you can keep the pressure regulated, and there's no signs of leakage, and you don't have the plastic fittings, and all the bins where it goes up a wall have a fitting, like a metal fitting, that's not swooped, then you're probably okay. It's when it swoops, when they swoop it without any kind of fitting in it, that it's most problematic. Here's the problem. You flip a home, you don't know that's what's in there, and I come in here, and that next buyer is like, stop, I'm not dealing with that. They're gonna get a plumber. Ben Franklin Plumbing's gonna come tell them it's $15,000. And they're not fixing the walls afterwards. Sorry for anyone who's been Franklin Plumbing. I did see a bid once for $15,000 from them. I was like, holy crap. But they're essentially replumbing the house. And you have all these holes cut in your wall. Now, there's a crap ton of houses in Kansas City that have this stuff. There was a big boom in Kansas City in the 80s and 90s. You don't have to freak out. You just need to know that it's there. And if I'm going to flip a house, then maybe I have my plumber check it all out, and I have it in writing for when I flip it. I don't know if that's going to save me or not. That I can't predict that next buyer. If it's a rental, I might be cool with it, you know? Knowing that I'm probably going to sell that house in 7 years, 1031 exchange, shoot, maybe it's going to bite me then, but you know, maybe in that meantime I make a plan to stash aside money from my rent, you know, and then right before I put it on the market, I move my tenant out, replumb it, put it on the market, you know. If you know, then you can make educated decisions ahead of time. I can't tell you how many recently renovated homes I've gone into, and from like the 1920s, the 1950s, and you see rust just like this. And they've painted right over it. I mean, it's not hard to see that through paint. Or it all looks really clean. You look around the back side of it, it's the foundation wall, and it's completely split open.
Oh.
Don't put your hand on it. It's gross. I mean, obviously, if it's leaking, it needs fixed, but not just because it leaks isn't super scary. I'm going to tell you, oh my gosh, this leaks. You got to fix this now. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's expensive either. The bigger issues are the accessibility of plumbing, and that entails the sewer issues. In Kansas City, we started out with cast iron pipes. That's what's underneath the slab of the home, and then we transitioned outside to clay tile piping. Clay tile is exactly what it sounds like. It's orange, it's round, it's clay. It had a gasket in it at one point, and they're usually 3 to 4 foot sections. And trees like water, and so it will grow in and get roots in there. Those roots get big, they break chunks off, they collapse in. Again, it's clay, so it's brittle. It can break. My personal home, built in 1966, cast iron pipe to clay tile, and clay tile looks really good. 98 feet, I have some tree roots sitting maybe at 100 foot. I maintain that. I'm not one of those people to freak out just because a sewer is old. Some of the big pink plumbing companies, they're in the business of selling sewers.
Yep.
in their mindset is that, well, it's old, it should be replaced. If I listen to that advice, I replaced my sewer line 10 years ago. It's been functioning fine. So
Wow.
maybe I didn't need to. I'm not a plumber, I'm not selling plumbing repairs. That's why I do sewer scopes. There are other plumbing companies, other specific only sewer inspection companies that I like and I've worked with and know and trust. And I did their personal home inspection, and I agree with them 100%. Sewer doctors.
Yep, good company.
They're a sewer cleaning company and a sewer inspection company, not a sewer replacement company.
Wow.
But I'm that same way. So I will give you the best advice I can. In trying to give you the best, like, hey, this is old, but it's functioning, but it's old, but it's functioning. Here's how you can maintain it. If you're gonna, that's how a buy and hold. If it's a flip, maybe I'm a little bit more aggressive because of some issue in it. Like, you might look at relining this portion of the pipe that has a crack. I don't mind a sewer line that has a crack if it's still flowing. If I own it, it's a buy and hold, and I get sewer line insurance, and I keep it cleaned. But if I'm gonna flip it, dang it, someone's gonna come in here and say this needs repaired. So maybe I get a liner in it, maybe but I make a decision based on information.
Right.
And this is all before I own the problem. Okay, I'm still. Can you stay till 9?
9, yeah.
Okay. We're getting more and more new questions, guys. When you're walking a home or a property, I always say I'm a property inspector, not a home inspector, because I do buildings and not just houses. But build process, you can repeat every single time. Stay organized, have a routine when walking a property. I mean, when I walk a property, I always go macro to micro. I mean, I stand far away, I look at it far away, and I get up close. I also go from top to bottom. So I walk around the outside, I look at it from far away, and then I get up close, and I look at it close, but I start looking from top to bottom, because frankly, shit falls downhill. Gravity will always win.
Yeah.
And so if you start up top, you'll see the issue. Water is always coming down. So if you start up top and you see an issue with the roof, then you see an issue at the gutter, see an issue at the wall, see an issue at the foundation, okay, you've traced that problem. Start up, work down. I walk in a house, and the reason why, I'll get back to that. I walk in a house and I go upstairs first, and I walk from the top to the bottom. I run bathrooms and sinks and flush toilets. See the toilets loose, use the side of your leg, don't use your hands, it's gross. But just push it beside your leg. Is it loose? Does it wobble? Flush the toilets, run the water, work your way downstairs. Work your way to the basement. That's my routine. I think it works, because again, everything falls down. So why not start from the top? And if you get to the basement, you see all the water leaking, you did your job. If you walk in the house, go straight to the basement, and then work your way up, flush the toilet, nothing leaks. Well, it's because you didn't go down below. Be super fastidious about taking photos and taking notes. I'm basically teaching you how to be like junior inspectors here. This is what I tell my guys. Start macro, go micro. Start top, go down. I see one of my guys, we do a lot of team inspections. I see one in the basement, what are you doing down here? Oh, you're just checking that? Because I very much believe in that start up and work down. Don't come to the basement and check out this water heater, because you're checking the plumbing, but you're also checking the bathrooms. Don't come down here and check that first. Just start up top, work down. Take your notes, take your information, review it with your contractor. If they get annoyed with you, say you're starting to find a new contractor. They're not the one taking the risk. They're going to get paid to do the job. Be an advocate for yourself. Call a professional when needed. If you don't know, call a pro. When to call and help. You don't need me to come walk houses with you if you start doing this stuff on your own and start researching. There's so much good information on the internet and terrible information too. But you can kind of source through. We've had the internet long enough and even AI long enough to know that this doesn't sound right. Verify it. But after you get under contract, that's the time to call an inspector. You can choose to do all these things or just part of them. Not every inspector works the way I do. Some have one model or one model only, but I believe in that. You tell me what you want, I'll put out that scope of work and I'll tell you what that cost. Some inspectors are like, nope, I only do this kind of inspection. And fair enough, that's how they want to operate, I totally understand. But if you do a lot of the legwork yourself, you don't have to pay someone like me to do a whole home inspection. Maybe I come in and do 5-point majors only. I had an investor from here, I don't think he's here tonight. It's like, I just want sewers and foundation. So I'm like, cool. We did that on like 20 duplexes, you know. And that's all he needed. He felt comfortable with the rest. As long as he understood, he was good. Almost every one of these things happen after contract, right? Before a contract, you can make a lot of these decisions yourself. You can walk through with your contractor too. I don't know how excited contractors get to walk houses that you don't even own or aren't even on contract on. But the time to call professionals is before you own the problem, before you close on that house. If you get to 3 days before closing, but you're outside of your due diligence period, not inspection period, it's the due diligence period. I'm one step in the due diligence period. Get the inspection done, I'm gonna give you homework saying, hey, this is broke. Well, how much does that cost? I think it's gonna cost this much, but you need to go with that tradesman, that plumber, that electrician, that whatever, get that number from them and make a decision. The benefits are you can renegotiate with the report. I'm a professional, non-biased person. You're going to see my scope of work. You're going to know that these are the things I'm checking, and I'm going to provide a crap ton of photos to show you exactly what I did do. And I'll be very transparent myself about what I'm not doing. Again, this varies widely among inspectors and how the reports look. So, sewer scopes, termite inspector, mold inspector. I ran all the time. You know, chimney inspections. Ken mentioned a collapsed chimney flue. You know, I have people go, why does this house have a chimney? There's no fireplace. It's the utility flue. And that utility flue is clay lined a lot of times, or if they're even older, they don't even have a clay liner in them. It's just brick. And then that's exhausting the gases from the water heater and the furnace and whatnot. And those things were typically designed for coal furnaces, and they're oversized, or that clay tile in there is collapsed and broken, and so you get these chimney inspectors out there. If it's big enough, and I don't have to shove a camera down, and I'll just look at all of it. But I do have a chimney guy that I love for his opinion on that stuff. Radon testing. So I don't want to like ever disparage radon, but like a radon test runs anywhere, I think the market rate's anywhere from $100 to $175 on a test. The cost to mitigate is about $900, give or take. So it's 50-50 in Kansas City. About 50% of the homes are going to be over 4.0 picocuries per liter, which is the number that the EPA has said 4.0 higher mitigation is recommended, under not so much. They have a weird caveat about 2.4 to 3.9 you might consider, which doesn't help me explain things to people because it's this gray area. But in a real estate contract, the magic number agents are looking for is 4.0 or higher. If it comes back at 4.0, 4.1, which has happened, someone may ask you to mitigate, you're looking at $900. Not the worst thing in the world. Now, if you're going to finish a basement, like I finished mine, I had my house mitigated before. That way I could put it behind the wall. It's a 4-inch white PVC pipe that just runs right up the foundation wall, usually on the outside of the home. Sometimes they go out through the attic. I could talk again for hours on just radon. I've taken so many classes on it. And in case you don't know what radon is, it's a naturally occurring gas that comes from the decaying soil, which has uranium in it underneath and around the property. It passes through concrete, and it can cause lung cancer. And there's plenty of people out there that say it's all a myth and don't believe it, but I can find that for any subject too. So the EPA recognizes it. Sellers are going to recognize it. The state of Kansas is very regulated on it. Missouri doesn't care. Like anyone can test, anyone could mitigate. Kansas have to submit quarterly records of every test they've run. And they track the living crap out of that stuff. And when you buy a home in Kansas, you get all these forms that rate on awareness. So, ask me questions. I love questions. This is the time.
Who's your chimney on and how much does it cost to do the?
I like cluttered chimney. CLUTTER. They get busy during the holiday season because they're cleaning and fixing chimneys. But Clutter's chimney does a great job. They can get busy. I don't know if it's super honest, just blunt answers. If you can't tell, I'll break that way.
Joseph has a question back here.
Yep.
Have you seen mold go eat through plaster?
Eat through plaster? No. It will not digest the concrete that's there, but it will grow on and in between because it's, it can come through.
So you can mitigate it just from the surface?
No.
It depends. If it was on one side but not the other, sure, they can clean it. But most likely it's an air infiltration problem from the outside, so plaster is going to be an older home. There's probably not any insulation in the walls. If it's coming through that wall, that's why it's really important to know what the water source is. Is it a humidity problem? So, short of cutting the wall open, we don't know what's back there. So, but there's a big difference between a water leak coming in from the roof causing mold on this side of the sheetrock, plaster, versus we got a rot issue outside and it's coming through and it's growing in through so much it's now coming through the inside. Does that help at all?
David have a question.
Yep.
Sure. What can you tell us about Orangeburg?
Ooh, thank you. I forgot about Orangeburg
I
piping.
encountered that myself.
Oh yeah, so Orangeburg piping is named after this town that was made in Orangeburg, New York. How far back do you want to go? World War II, we had a steel shortage, so they started making sewer lines out of basically paper mache.
Yeah.
It's basically a cardboard, wood pulp, shellacked, and tar. It was a temporary stopgap. Oh, I wish I was at that meeting when they were coming up with this idea. Like, hey, you know what we can do? There was a steel shortage. I guess we had to win the war. I mean, it wasn't a war.
They're making pennies out of steel.
Yeah. So, long story short, it's oval shaped. When I run my camera in it, then you'll see all this kind of like spider webby looking stuff. I came across it in KCK once, and there was 40 feet of it underneath the street that went up to down to the cul-de-sac. It was going to be a $45,000 replacement for that sewer line because they were digging up the street, and the city wasn't going to do it, and the city was going to make it put back the concrete.
Yeah.
And that means the city guys out there measuring it as they, the temperature as they mix it. I'll have a really cool picture of it. I've only ever once seen it not underground. It was during an inspection, and it was like, you could just see it just like got this perfect belly to it. It's black. It's not super easy to identify though, but it's at the end of its life. So it's an automatic, I see it, replace it. And it's just usually filled with roots, and it's like shaped like this.
And you may have covered this when I was being bombarded at the beginning. You had your checklist. We were going to get to them. How do they get that?
I wasn't quite on top of my game to get a QR code, so just email me and I'll send it to you. Or Kim can send it out to whoever attended at the end.
Well, just email Adam that you want a copy of his checklist, and that way he has, it's what, like 5 or 6 pages?
Yeah, it's
That way that you can go through and check everything off.
RIP inbox.
yeah, just
And I can email it out too, but I was trying to.
yeah, email me. I mean, it's pretty simple. We cover a lot here, but it's meant to be for you to go through and write notes. Appreciate the order in which I put it in: roof, attic, structure, electrical, HVAC, plumbing. I start with the big stuff. I can repeat that stuff in my sleep.
And if you go out of order, you'll forget something, and you'll come home and go, so was there an electrical box in that house? Because I went out of order and I missed it.
Right. So I get those big ones first, but you can still walk a property and go back, but before you leave, you get in your car, do one more double check that I get everything. Or maybe I wanted to add more notes to a certain thing, but it's literally left in a kind of wide open format. That way you guys can write notes in there. There's also some just more practical advice too in here, kind of a little bit of like what I was talking about today, when to call a professional, and some disclaimer. If you jack this up and make a bad purchase, not my fault. But do take your time. This is one step, this is one tool to help you guys.
So if we are selling a flip house and the homeowner gets their inspection, and we've had this happen, and the inspector comes back, brand new roof, brand new, perfect, brand new roof, and they're like, oh my God, the roof might need replaced someday, and the buyers were totally freaked out.
Yeah.
What do we tell the buyers when the inspector tells them something's gonna wear out when it's brand new?
That's really good. Actually, this, because you're going to get inspectors that don't know shit. And they're just terrible. And they're, you know, I don't know. Like, it happens, okay?
There's no licensing in the state of Missouri or Kansas for a home inspector, and people need to know that.
Correct. There is no licensing in
There is
Kansas.
no training, there's no nothing.
So, let me talk
Except
about
ASHI, there's ASHI inspectors.
that. Let me talk. There is no state licensing in Kansas, Missouri, Hawaii. There is no licensing in 50% of the states. I'm not against or for licensing of home inspectors. I don't think it really makes a bit of difference, because I know from the national organizations that there are more lawsuits in states that have licensing than non-licensing. The reason is licensing says this is your standard of practice. This is what you follow. Great. Now I do the minimum. And so it dissuades inspectors from going above and beyond. It does protect consumers from fraudulent guys that don't know what they're doing. To state licensing, I'm a licensed real estate agent. Don't hire me to be your real estate agent. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Frankly.
But you can hire me.
Yeah. But that's my point. It's like, I'm licensed in that. It doesn't mean I know what I'm doing, right? So I'm not against or for licensing home inspectors, but yeah, it's 50-50. Do your own due diligence. The state of Texas regulates their inspectors so much, it tells them what order the report's in and what font size it has to be. That's really going to restrict me. Oh, you went outside the standards of practice. Oh, you went above and beyond. We're going to sanction you for that. Oh, crap, okay. So, you know, not every state's that way, but like, yes, it's 50% of states don't require licensing of home inspectors. Do research. I know guys that are master inspectors that are terrible. Not local. I know guys that are certified professional inspectors that are brand new, 2 years in, 1 year in, that know their stuff. Just because someone was a contractor before doesn't mean they actually know what they're talking about. I've seen contractors become inspectors that don't know. It just depends on that person. Look at their sample reports, talk to them. You know, you can go to my website, you can see my sample reports, you can see my style.
But if they're calling out brand new stuff that's gonna wear out, or telling you stuff that's not, that this needs replaced when it's done to code.
Yeah, I see mistakes, you know, and I've had people call me up like, well, that's grandfathered in. Well, I'm gonna give you the latest, greatest standard. Let me explain to you why I said this. And I've had agents, you know, list agents challenge me. I'm like, you don't know crap about electrical. Cool. I'll meet you out there with my master electrician. You meet me out there with yours. We'll evaluate it together. If those two master licensed electricians disagree with what I wrote, I will amend my report with what they have in writing. But it has to be on the letterhead with their license number. I've thrown that out there 30, 40 times over the last 15 years. I've been called an a-hole, all kinds of things for saying that, but I'm like, I mean it. If you disagree with what I say, then have, you know, and I've been on that side where someone says something, I'm like, that's inaccurate. But I have a vested interest in this property. How do I counteract it? You know, do I say, oh, I'm an inspector, I know better? No, I have a vested interest. I bring out the roofer. If I have a home and I have a new roof on it and there's something someone said that I think is false, I'm going to bring out a roofer, a certified, licensed, whatever, have them put it in writing, countering that, because they're the specialist. And, you know, my reports, I put possible mold. I'm not testing it for mold. I say it's possible mold. I've had agents say that's not right, you can't do that. Okay, so possible. Maybe I caused you some headache, but have it tested. That's the only way to know. Don't get emotional. just counteract with a professional opinion. Yes, sir.
Adam, I see a lot of these on the inspection, and I will tell you that the biggest thing, especially if we're renting in Wyandotte or in Missouri,
Yep.
on the new inspections and everything, if you're doing these inspections and you do have a landlord that you're representing to buy a property, you go in and you see brand new plumbing, and we all know that you can see brand new plumbing because PVC now has a date on it.
Yep.
We also know that Wyandotte looks at the date of everything on their rental inspections to make sure. How do you call that out for the buyer to make sure that those inspections, or should I say those changes, were permitted before the buy?
Good question. So, just to clarify, someone's buying a property, it's going to be a rental property, it's had recent plumbing work, let's say, for example. KCK is very fastidious about their regulation of rental properties, and if you change the window, then you have to have a permit, and you have to have it cleared with them. To be honest, I'm not sitting there going, oh, this is going to be a rental, let me go down all these extra paths for you. In my reports, I'm going to say, hey, there's been recent repairs done to the plumbing. Make them aware that there's recent repairs.
Right.
You know, to do more due diligence. Who was the contractor, were proper permits pulled and all that. I don't speak specifically to that rental side of it, but I'm probably one in like 100 inspectors that's actually going to say, hey, there's been recent repairs done. Most inspectors are going to be like, it's functioning. We are going to predict what your next steps with the property are, even if you tell us it's a little bit outside of our norm. So to be honest, it's going to be, unless you're calling me out there for that specific purpose, for that design scope of work, it's probably not going to happen with the average inspector. It's at realistic hopes. But yeah, let's say from a flip standpoint, you flip something and I write something, or some inspector writes something, and you're in disagreement, or your contractor's in disagreement, the best thing to do is call an engineer, call a roofer. I've had people disagree. Hey, this furnace is 30 years old. I was told I was wrong. The homeowner was super mad at me. I'm like, it's 30 years old. My HVAC guy says it's not. Okay, have them put it in writing. I checked with 3 HVAC companies I know and had them put it in a letterhead saying that this was the manufacture date of it. You know, I don't like to argue feelings, I like to argue facts.
We got all the questions. I'm sure you're gonna, as soon as we leave and you're gonna get like halfway home and you're gonna go, oh, I should have asked this question. So usually I ask, how do we reach you, Adam? But you've already provided us a phone number and an email. So if we have questions, we can reach out and say, hey.
Yep.
And is that's an office phone, so that's not textable?
That's not textable, that is my office number. I mean, there's plenty of people that hear that on my cell phone number.
yeah, that's okay, they can email you. That way you can control it.
It's on purpose. I don't publish myself, otherwise I would just get bombarded every day.
I agree.
But email me, I'll get back with you, and we can schedule a time to talk. You know, and I do that all the time. That's why so many people have my cell phone number.
And I have one more question for you, because this is what prompted this meeting. I had somebody, a former MAREI member, was doing some kind of inspection, and they needed an expert to come, I think, and your name was passed along, that you could come do like a forensic inspection to see what somebody had actually done.
Yeah, an expert witness inspection, and in that case it ended up he really was set on having a general contractor, which is totally cool, but yeah, I do expert witness.
So if they're suing each other and you need to prove it.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
It's usually really stupid shit. I testified in court because of a bad stain job on the deck. The roofer was out there for hail damage, said, oh, your deck stain's bad too. We can restain that for you. It'll be covered under insurance. They did it. It just ended up in trial.